Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on Microsoft's Security Service Edge, aka SSE solution. My name is Rich Lilly. I'm a field CTO for our cybersecurity practice, and myself, along with Jeff, who I'll intro in just a second, are going to take you through Microsoft's recently launched SSE solution under whatever acronym you so choose. We'll talk about some of the benefits and the features of the solution, and more specifically, I will be showing some demonstration and what the capabilities actually look like in real time as well. I'm joined by Jeff here. Jeff, you want to do a quick intro and then take on the ball here?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Jeff Rostis here. I'm the team lead for our Microsoft security practice here at Netrix. Happy to show you through SSE here today. So as Rich noted, our agenda here today is just talk about why we're looking at SSE as a category, kind of the legacy challenges we have with network security. Talk about that category, SSE, why it's had to be formed and kind of define it for us. And then look at Microsoft's new security offering in this space. We'll talk through the two different solutions, internet access and private access. We'll be able to jump over them, and Rich will give you a good thorough demo on how those work. And then we'll come back, talk a little bit about the current pricing of it and ways we might be able to help you test it out or deploy it if you're interested. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, our legacy network security really isn't fitting the bill anymore. Changes in the way we work, accelerating digital transformation, lots of online services and SaaS apps, really has altered the way our users and us as administrators might be accessing our services, right? So we need something a little bit more agile, a little bit easier to manage, something that's maybe unified so we can kind of protect all of our applications and resources a bit more easily. What we found is these kind of the traditional security approaches don't really have the scale we need nowadays, don't have a great end user experience, different agents, different connections, and often will grant excessive access to our various networks and services, that we want to really put more tighter control on. With those kind of excessive access, any compromised device, any compromised user, a single piece of malware, a phishing message, and a compromised credential really has a lot of open access to your network and services. So that's something we want to lock down. So none of these kind of current legacy controls can provide this full coverage for us. Even if we have a couple of different solutions in place, just because we have this disjointed access, disjointed control surfaces, there's gaps in between that a skilled adversary might be able to exploit for us and get in and compromise our network. So what we have seen come up is this kind of new category of security service edge. And what it is the ability for us to provide something that's more identity aware, something that's more cloud-based and is agile for what we need here in modern technology. So this brings us to what Microsoft now has to offer for us in two different SKUs, two different services for us. And that is the Security Service Edge solution, which comprises both internet access and private access. The goal of this is to provide secure access for your users to any app, for any resource, and from any location, and be able to provide you that security around it. The key to this really is that we can unify this under conditional access policies. These policies will consider identity, device, application, as you now know, as you're probably currently using. And what we add on here with the SSE solution is the ability to add network conditions to all of these conditional access rules, regardless of which identity provider you're using. If you're using our intra conditional access rules, we can just go ahead and implement these additional factors into our conditional access. So now, since the SSE solution is derived from Microsoft's largest private network, the global network, this means we can optimize and secure connections for users and devices in any public or private location, improving the performance and the access to the resources along with the security. Now, this is aligned with zero trust principles, as Microsoft tries to align to with all its services. And it helps us to verify that each identity uses a risk-based context, giving users access only to application resources and destinations that they need to do their job and nothing more. So with identity and network access working together in this regard, we can bridge the gap across multiple tools in one place, use configured unified identity and network access controls just directly in the conditional access in Microsoft Entra that we're already used to. So as I said, this is comprised of two components, internet access and private access. Together, this is the SSE offering, coupled also with some of the CASB, the Defender for Cloud Apps, really combines to complete the offering here. But let's talk about each one. So internet access is an identity-centric secure web gateway, SWG, as you may be familiar with the term, that covers all of your SaaS apps and internet traffic and extends those into conditional access policies. That way you can protect against malicious internet traffic, unsafe or non-compliant content, and any other threats from the open internet that your users may run against. For example, you can block access to all external destinations for any users that are flagged as high risk, or if they're on a non-compliance device, and then only allow through limited, allow list URLs to allow your user to recover or get some basic work done. The other side of the service here is Microsoft Entra Private Access. This, you may be familiar with the classic application proxy from Entra, which thousands of customers use to access private web apps configured now today. Entra Private Access is a better solution, a continuation of that. It is a complete identity-centric zero trust network access solution. It saves the really same application connectors, but offers a lot more services and features. Really helps you organize simply and secure access for all your users to any private resource, any port, any protocol that you have, and put those conditional access controls around them, right? So these two services together is what's combined to offer what is covering the SSE solution in this category. Now there are we'll drill in a little bit further here, kind of some of the unique differentiations and some of the detail on each of these services here. And Microsoft really kind of calls out a couple different pieces that make this approach unique compared to some of the other SSE platforms that you may be aware of. So first, we're tied into conditional access in this unified way that we've been talking about. This means we're considering identity, device, application, and now network as well as part of those conditional access conditions. This means it's really easy for us to unify and centralize all these policies together in one place, one point of control, and strengthen them with continuous access evaluation. This is coming where we can, on the fly, reevaluate and adjust those policies if conditions change. The second major differentiator is Microsoft's global network. If you're unaware, it is, I think, one of the largest in the world as for a private resource. But really, it helps minimize latency for any access point anywhere in the world and provides best-in-class performance and resiliency. The globally distributed proxy is run off of Microsoft's private and well-distributed wide area network with points of presence closest to all the users that you may be working with to eliminate kind of those extra hops and to optimize traffic routing, taps, and resources. This gives you a great hybrid work experience, and it's fast and consistent. You can now connect with your remote workers and branch offices seamlessly through this global secure edge, and it's only milliseconds away from the user's location. So we don't have traffic hairpins, we don't have single points of failures, and this tends to be a more robust point of presence than we see with some of the other platforms. Finally, the third item here is really the enhanced security and visibility, particularly for Microsoft 365 and its flexible deployment options. You can pick any of the capabilities from the solution and even run it side by side with existing vendors. So if you're already involved with an SSE platform, this can really help enhance that and benefit from both those services going. Um, you have flexibility to easily benefit from the unique security and visibility in your 365 apps, um, giving you an optimal experience for end users and the security team, while still having those other platforms for those services as well. Let's dive into each service independently here for you. Uh, we're going to start here with the intra-internet access. So, as we were saying, internet access is the secure web gateway portion of the service, right? And it's deeply integrated, as we've been talking about, with identity. So, with this unified identity-centric solution, includes secure web gateway, a cloud access security broker when integrated with Defender for Cloud Apps, and also threat detection services. We can centralize our access controls into the unified conditional access portal, right? So we're using those policy engine to shape all of this for us. As a result, what you end up doing is being able to seamlessly extend identity, location, device, and network controls of your conditional access to the entire stack. So we can secure all of our data traffic to any internet destination that we're going to be using. Also, what we're seeing coming soon is the continuous access value evaluation being available in the service. This will enable us to allow these network policies to dynamically adapt based on changing conditions, right? So if we're seeing a change to the risk score, if we're seeing the device compliance change, say the users are being onboarded, offboarded, this is going to dynamically and live change the status and change our network policies. It seems what this ends up being is a easier, more agile, more integrated approach to providing the secure internet access. So built around zero trust principles and fitting to whatever your enterprise needs. We're going to try to align all this with identity security. And when we do that, we eliminate any cracks, any gaps in our coverage, and allows you a lot of flexibility and granularity towards to who has access and what they have access to. As a unique feature in here, we are talking about the internet access for 365. So this is really shaping around the 365 protocols and services, which tend to be a majority of our usage. And this is really intended to be available to work side by side with other existing platforms. So even if you're already running an SSE provider, this allows you to leverage the internet access for Microsoft 365 to encapsulate that traffic, which is often a difficult thing for these other providers to cover, just because of the broad range of protocols and other things. So we get all these tools, we get these adaptive access controls, centralized management in the conditional access policies, and a lot of visibility. We get to see the traffic and real time logs and visibility there. As a unique feature, internet access for 365 is going to be included with E3 licensing. So if you have E3 or higher, you're already included and have this service available to you with no additional cost. Just to focus in a little bit more on that universal conditional access, just wanted to look at this and dive in at how these controls are updated now when we look at SSE being a part of the picture. So this is how we enable connectivity into the internet access solution. We now have global secure access as a resource pre-integrated within the existing conditional access controls. This means you have the flexibility to configure your conditional access policies on any or all access, or to network connectivity by default, right? So we can explicitly select the specific traffic profile for each policy. That means your users can access these resource destinations only after they require a valid token for our internet access service, meaning they need to authenticate before we even give them any sort of access to these. This means we end up with zero trust coverage, and also for all those resources that we're covering that do not support basic auth yet or conditional access natively, we can enforce these advanced constructs like continuous access evaluation directly from the conditional access rules. Um, Additionally, we can also use user context awareness. So in addition to this, the device factors, the location factors, we can include that as part of our network filtering policies. Talking about those network filtering, this is a fit for kind of what is you'd expect as a secure web gateway. By adding this to our session controls, we can now apply the specific user device and location context, again, directly and already inside of our existing conditional access rules. So for example, you might want only your PR department to be able to access social media sites and block all other users. So that's possible now with this conditional access rules. Let's talk about compliant network check as a major feature here. Um, this with SSE, we introduced this new concept of the compliant network check within our rules here. This ensures that the user is connecting from a verified network, um, and this gives you that verified network connectivity model for specific enterprise tenant and is compliant with all the network security policies that you've enforced. So the compliant network check is similar yet more powerful than say source IP or known locations, and it's much easier to manage and maintain. You don't have to go through the process of building that list of all of your enterprise source IPs, keeping them updated. Um, we can protect these remote users regardless of where they are, if they're in your branch offices, their home location, other networks, and put the appropriate security controls around them. Another great feature here in Internet Access is the source IP restoration. Um, Source IP restoration, they rely, when we're doing with conditional access, we rely on source IP information to assess our conditional access rules as well as report in our logs. So what SSE does is actually restore the source IP for both. The at the authentication plane as well as at the data plane when they're accessing services. We get that backward compatibility of seeing that source IP. And some of the other solutions, you may see this mask. You may see everybody coming from a single collected endpoint that's being relayed. Um, the IP location checks, they do proactive restoration. So, meaning that as soon as they connect in, we see that real source IP. So it shows up here in your sign-in logs, as well as part of identity protection risk assessments, and any of your other calculations that may be looking at that source IP to help determine risk state. So this is a great feature, restoring that, and when some other services can't do that. We also have universal tenant restriction. This is a kind of a revised version of that. This allows us to have granular controls as well for the tenant. So tenant users, groups, identity, application level, even anonymous access. We can use this intra-internet access-based tagging to get coverage for all of your traffic, regardless of what the browser is being used, what OS is being used on the device. We don't need to manage local proxies anymore. We can support both branch connectivity and direct from device, and still appropriately tag it for this tenant restriction controls. All right, let's flip over to the other side of the service here, which is the private access, and talk about some of those features. So one of the things that this fits really well with is moving beyond legacy VPN solutions, right? So traditionally, we would come in, have connectivity via VPN gateway, and really give someone some broad access to an entire subnet, all ports, all IPs, usually without some, for more exhaustive restrictions here. Now, certainly, we could incorporate intra ID with a lot of these services, being able to do VPN authentication. But what we get here now with the intra-private access is the ability to get that explicit conditional access verification as we provide access. So while a traditional VPN can't really scale well, can't isolate our services, um, this allows us to really dial in and focus our access to single applications, single services, and control that dynamically for each user. So some of you may be familiar with application proxy in Microsoft Intra. That is the kind of classic use case here. Um, Thousands of people use it currently. We have a lot of our clients do that as well. Um, Intra-private access is an improvement on this. This is really incorporating that identity-centric zero trust network access to really share the same application connectors that we've been using, but offers a lot of additional features and services really to help you secure and simplify access to any private resource that you may be hosting, regardless of port or protocol. Since we're built on zero trust principles, we really try to remove the risk and the operational complexity of legacy VPNs while still making it as easy as possible for our end users. All right, so just kind of cover here some of these migrations that we might look at when we're talking about replacing legacy VPNs. This means we have a fast and easy migration. We want to minimize the risk of implicit trust and lateral movement. So we replace this legacy VPNs with something that is more of a identity-centric zero trust network access. So quick access is a service here that allows you to get started very quickly by migrating your deployment from your current VPN to this identity-centric solution. We can easily configure a broad private IP range, all of our internal fully qualified domain names, and quickly enable this service to replace and provide access to all the private resources. We have broad application support within private access. This means we can secure any application or service that we need to. This includes any on-premise private applications using any port, any protocol. So that includes RDP, SSH, SMB file shares, FTP, printers, private web services, even non-web apps, anything based around TCP or UDP protocols. With this, we also can add enhanced identity-centric controls. Means we can provide unique security controls by placing the identity security at the center of the policy. So based on who you are, what you get access to. So these conditional access policies allow us to set up modern authentication in front of any or all of these private apps and legacy protocols. So if we're authenticating with, Kerberos and NTLM, we can easily control access to these private accesses and still put modern authentication controls in front of them. An example would be we could easily put MFA and a device compliance check when we're trying to do RDP, say to one of our servers, or accessing one of our SMB file shares on-prem. We also have deep integration with continuous access evaluation. Allows us to terminate ongoing sessions if something changes, if anomalies come up. If our user or device security posture changes, we can make that change on the fly. For example, if we have a user connect from one part of the world, gets in and has access, and then immediately see that connection shift to another location, something we would call impossible travel. We can identify this as an anomaly, enforce re-authentication or a step-up authentication. In addition, we can enable single sign-on for all of this. So our applications can be SSO enabled using SAML or HTTP headers. Even legacy Kerberos is possible for both web and non-web applications in this scenario. The other pieces we also get here is granular app visibility, discovery, and onboarding when we set up private access. We can use application discovery. It allows us to discover our on-premise applications and onboard them to Entra ID private access so we can define granular access to them. This means we can start with a fairly broad replacement for our VPN access, use that discovery to identify our apps, who's using them, how they're being used, and then separate them out into granular controls. This means we have a lot of the easier process of migrating and onboarding these private apps without too much of a changeover for our end users. Another benefit is our segmented app access. This means we can segment access to specific applications instead of access to the entire network, right? So traditional VPNs may give us access to the entire subnet or all the protocols. This means we can segment these policies for each applications or to a group of applications. Um, we can segment this also then by our user and device identity. We can also segment this using process identity. Intelligent local access is one other feature here is also good. Um, we see now that with a lot of our users and kind of modern, workplace and work from home, we need to have our employees have consistent security posture wherever they're at. If they're coming in remotely or accessing on-prem, we need consistent and intelligent access to our apps, regardless of where those apps are hosted. So intelligent local access capability allows us to use zero trust network access for users anywhere and keep the consistent uh, conditions and security policies the same. Um, so when they're connecting remotely anywhere beyond our corporate network boundaries, we can put these controls in, have a consistent access, know that our security controls are enforced regardless of the location. Let's talk about a couple of some common scenarios and use cases that we may see using inter-private access. So as I mentioned, quick access is that easy migration path. We can set up basically a legacy VPN equivalent to allow that connectivity into your network. So set that up and already with that initial setup, we have that advantage of being able to put in our zero trust controls, our conditional access controls for that VPN access and have it integrated into our conditional access rules. In addition to that, we have the app discovery that we talked about. This allows us to, once we have that quick access running, discover the apps we're using, start putting controls, register them in Entra ID, and start segmenting that out as we go. When we get to that point of having that per app access, we configure each of those apps with a policy and enforce whatever rules we need, isolate it to just the users that need it. And we also get the benefit of being able to have rich apps and app segments, meaning that we can have SSO enabled for non-HTTP applications, for legacy protocols like Kerberos, for example. RDP is a great one. SSH, put MFA in front of that before we have access to any servers. And then because we're working in Entra ID, we have the ability to do app groups and policies, meaning we can use some of our automated onboarding for assigning users to different groups and applications, including just-in-time management and access reviews and those as well. All right, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Rich here. He's going to walk you through a nice, rich demo of the features.
I like the rich and rich demo. It fits really well, Jeff. Nice transition. I appreciate it, Jeff. And hopefully this gave everyone kind of a good baseline in general of kind of where things are at. I think that, again, this is still a fairly new solution as of July 1st, but I think, this is a pretty relevant opportunity that Microsoft has been looking at for some time. So I'm going to take a bit from Jeff's focused in on kind of the foundations, and let's actually look at the reality. And I don't think I've actually seen a lot of content around there for this. So hopefully everyone that's still listening or looking at the recording can learn some new things about the SSE solution, how it actually works and fits. So I think key piece number one to talk through. From an admin perspective, the SSE administration sits 100% within the Entra admin portal. There's a global secure access or GSA section here at the bottom of the Entra group, essentially, or the grouping of resources on the page. I will call out as well, Microsoft does have 90-day free trials that are available. They are enforcing licensing for anyone that was in the preview as of October 1st. So definitely, one things we'll talk about as a call to action is maybe using some of that trial licensing, getting some help from us at the tail end of today. But that's something certainly we want everyone to think about. Let's talk about what this actually looks like, though. So Jeff talked about some of the basics of how the connectivity works for this, and this is built corely on the foundation of the app proxy service. So what you'll find is that these app proxy services can be deployed in multiple different data centers, multiple different branch offices, multiple different application segments, if you have different app segments within your network. So I'm not going to go through the principles of how that works, but that proxy at its core is establishing an outbound 443 connection. And essentially, you've got the cloud service in this case accepting and then redirecting those connections over that outbound portal. So to be clear, for those that haven't worked with that proxy before, there's no perimeter connectivity. There's no edge WAN node or network adapter. This is purely a service that gets installed on a Windows server, establishes that within the data center, the branch office, the application segment that you have it deployed. Then we can scope to that connector when we're looking to access specific applications and also create specific rules around those as well. So again, really key important point here as far as how that interaction works. One thing I will also point out too is the opportunity for deploying to remote networks. So in this case, with remote networks and how that's different, connectors are allowing access in. Remote networks allows us to establish a configuration with a site-to-site tunnel, so that anything on that LAN segment of that firewall or routing device will essentially force the traffic through routing rules to Microsoft. So you may ask, where is this helpful? This may be helpful in sites where you can't or don't have the time to deploy all of the agents yet. So this is agentless. Also for networks that maybe don't have agent support. So for instance, like Windows servers, I may deploy this on a Windows server LAN or a site in my data center. Also, scenarios where I have guest users or guest accounts is also a relevant scenario. So essentially, instead of requiring the client to enforce a lot of these controls, networks allow us to establish a connection with any standard router firewall device out there. It's pretty easy to set up. We actually set up a demo the other day just against one of our Azure environments. And you'll simply pick out a region where you want it to connect to. You'll add that link, and you'll see it from this drop down. You'll see a whole bunch of different options for your standard devices out there to configure that. That's a site-to-site tunnel. And again, once you have that established, like we do in, say, an Azure VNet, everything in that Azure VNet or that LAN segment, it's going to create the rules and routes in order for it to then force the traffic down through Microsoft's proxies. So this is pretty interesting. I think it offers up some, a key use case for many folks, especially where there's, non-client based connectivity happening. With that, let's talk about the client for a second here. So as you can see from this page here, there are clients available for Windows 10 and Windows 11, as well as Android. Those are generally available today. In fact, I think they're generally available as of the July 1st release. For iOS and Mac OS, they are preview clients. I believe they are still opt-in, sign up. So you'll see the get early access here, but you do have that expanding outside just the Windows fleet capabilities as well. That client is very easy to download and deploy. In fact, I grabbed the latest copy just the other day, and I wanted to deploy it. There's actually a pretty great guide out there by a third party that I read through that just talks through packaging up the Intune app WIM file and just pushing that down to the devices as a mandatory app. This probably took me all of maybe 3 to 4 minutes to set up and upload the file. And then at that point, it automatically deployed that. And you'll see now this new lovely client down here, this little globe with a checkbox showing the taskbar of my device. You can also manually install it, obviously, if you're just doing some testing. But again, I prefer to have some type of deployment mechanism. A couple of things to point out too as well, since we're in here on the client. So there are very few controls the user has over this, especially from an admin perspective, and we need that, right? Because we also have conditional access policies that are going to block things when they don't work properly. In here, you can see a couple key places. There's a disable and enable, a collect logs, and specifically just the advanced diagnostics, which you're going to see some additional health check capabilities, what forwarding profiles are assigned, as well as host name acquisition, and even traffic logging. Especially as I was going through and doing some testing and trying to figure out routing and things like that. This is pretty key for me, and especially from an admin perspective, to be able to troubleshoot those issues. Once the client is deployed, then what does that look like? Let's go back to our main dashboard here. So in this case, you can see a bunch of different kind of baseline information. We've got the total amount of destinations, both on the internet and private side here that are being connected to, how many users, the devices. Also, any matches on like blocked categories, which you've got some web content filtering here enabled. The top used destinations even broken down by M365 and the internet access and even private access. Again, just taking some of that data we have in here. And even some usage profiling and some other data. This is kind of just giving me my landing page, but I know many of you who are maybe looking at or leveraging other solutions today are looking for some of these out of the box views and reports. And I'll expand upon this even a little. Perspective of access. I think it is super important to understand the path forward, and Jeff did a fantastic job explaining what path that we are seeing. One is we do have customers looking to just directly replace VPN in somewhat short order for whatever reason that may be. In this case, you have this quick access segment where I can simply go in, choose the connector, choose the app segment, which can be as something as simple as putting in like an IP address range, typically like a CIDR range. I can do something like, the this slash 24, for instance, and even set up that I want just port 80 and port 443. Or obviously, I can put in ranges and other options as well. Sorry, EDN 443 there. Typically typing for some reason. And then what I want that to be enabled on. So this in the most direct way allows you to get pretty easy and direct access. And again, if you're looking to move over from VPN, this is a pretty standard path forward. That being said, we can get into the granularity of enterprise applications by creating much more specific rule sets. So in my environment here, you can see four major kind of enterprise applications that we're publishing to our users. We've got our RDP protocol, we've got an internal websites protocol, I'm sorry, internal websites app, a Kerberos SSO app, and domain controllers for any communications our machines need back to the environment. These are pretty straightforward to set up. You'll notice the interface is going to look somewhat similar to the quick access page that I just went through a second ago. And again, we'll go name this like, say app server web, and I'll go ahead and choose this application segment again. Maybe it could be as simple as an IP address like 192.168.1.7. We'll do 443 because we want to be secure, and we'll keep that just on TCP. I'm not going to go ahead and save this, but you can see what that looks like once it's applied. Then once that application gets created, I have a lot more capabilities then of how to control access to it, scope conditional access policies, et cetera. So as a quick example, let's go look at our RDP to servers example. This is probably one of the most common use cases I hear is that, hey, I've got an IT workforce that is highly remote today. In order to connect to our servers today, they need to either VPN in or hit a perimeter AVD or Windows 365 environment. Why can't we just give them direct access, but in a secure way? And that's something that private access steps really well into the space on. So the server configuration is actually pretty straightforward. Again, very similarly here, we've got our application segment. We've got a couple CIDR ranges and FQDNs here, and we're just publishing port 3389. So unlike Jeff's example, if we pulled off the quick access, which is the easy in, if we just had this rule, only the people in this group with the scope in that CA policy are going to get the access they define here. So it's very much a layered approach. The first thing we're doing here is we're defining what is the access. In this case, it's going to be RDP to these three subnets, and then a FQDN. The other important part is going to be who are we actually granting that access to. In this case, I've got a very specific group that just has me in it, and that access is very specific to this, this group of users that we've allowed access. Now, you can manage things a couple different ways in this. You can say that someone like Rich or someone like your IT admin is always in this group and can always do this. But why not take the more secure approach and say, let's leverage PIM, which is a little known function, and I can do group elevation in PIM to elevate to that secure access private RDP group when I need it. And it's only for X amount of time. maybe it's only for the 2 hours I need to go work on and troubleshoot something on a Windows server, or maybe I need to SSH into one of my Linux boxes in order to test something. In this case, I'm not a persistent member of private access for RDP, but I elevate to that for the time I need with the justification I have with the additional authentication context. And only then can I then connect to that, which is completely automated and seamless, behind the scenes to the end user who's using the client. So that's a really great experience and something that we see asked by a lot of our customers. I think offers kind of a unique take on what is likely traditional remote access today. The other thing that I want to point out since we're in here is the ability of using conditional access. I think one of the most powerful features here is that in addition to defining the what, I'm accessing to, but the who is in what additional controls do I want to be able to put in place. So this is an example of a conditional access policy that I've put in place for this specific app. So again, remember this service, me publishing RDP to these users only, is being scoped and serviced in a very specific way. So the first things first is only the group that I'm mentioning has access to this RDP group. Again, I've elevated to that RDP group to get that access. Because RDP to servers actually becomes an application, that can be a target here. And then also I can choose things to, such as, do I want to require some specific MFA policy or strength? This is one that's actually probably not talked about enough, in my opinion. But earlier this year, late last year, Microsoft added the ability of forcing a specific authentication strength. So even though RDP doesn't natively, without like an RD gateway or a third-party solution, allow MFA in front of the protocol, we can actually put MFA in front of RDP's protocol here, or in front of as Jeff said, a 440, an app published on 443 or 80 or 143 or 675 or whatever it may be. So it allows us to put some modern authentication mechanisms in front of that. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. The way you configure that, by the way, is there's a whole subsection under conditional access policies. Specifically, that's called authentication strengths. And what I've done for our demo here is I've created a specific RDP protocol strength that I'm requiring. In this case, I could choose my options. Like maybe I only want to provide FIDO2 phishing resistant MFA for someone to be able to RDP into our servers. Again, without modifying the RDP protocol or access to the servers. So this is probably not well known enough in my opinion, but you have the option or the opportunity of setting what methods you want to support. And this is good because if a user like myself has a phone call, an authenticator app, a text message, FIDO2 token, we may just accept any of them. But because this is a sensitive RDP server, RDPing into a server scenario, I specifically want a push notification or phone sign in, or again, I can even do FIDO2 or Hello for Business as a part of these as well. So again, just be aware this exists, and I think another nice feature to put in front of the service without too much work. One other thing we're going to do as well is we're going to enforce a session frequency sign-in. I have this currently set up to a re-authentication every hour, which is mutually independent of the 8 hours that I say maybe elevated to in PIM. But that's going to make sure that the user is still the user, the session is still the session. I need to make sure that I'm verifying that. This is optional, but something I would recommend at the very most. So the reason why I spent so much time on this RDP to servers example is because I actually want to show what it looks like. So I've already, as a part of this, elevated to this group, which means I'm in the scope, which means I'm in the policy, which means I'm connected up to the private access profile. So basically, the connectivity itself is should have already been established. I did that right as Jeff was talking about 5 or 10 minutes ago here. So now, if I want to go RDP to say any server in the environment, we've allowed a specific subset of CIDR range IP addresses. Again, could be FQDN. I'm just going to go ahead and try to connect up to my jump box. And what we should see pop up here in just a second, assuming the demo gods are with me, they are, thankfully. Global secure access action required. Please sign into this network. This is going to pop up. That's actually the SSE client popping up an additional MFA prompt saying, hey, your organization policy requires you, based on the policy you guys just saw, that you additionally verify who you are. Even if I've already passed that on this device, we're going to verify again. So I'm going to go through and do a verification. I've got my mobile phone next to me. So again, I'll just do a quick verify on that code. and we'll see that it will then allow me in. So what's going to happen is it's going to validate who I am. It's going to essentially ensure that connection is valid. And then the connection did fail. That did time out while I was going through that process. I'm going to give it about 5 seconds or so. And what we're going to do is reconnect once more. And now, because I've passed the MFA challenge and that is now good for 1 hour, I can simply go ahead and now log into my internal server via RDP on my device that's sitting right now at my house. If the device chooses to respond here, we'll see in just a second. But that's really it. This is absolutely use case we see. This is just one example of a protocol again. And there we go. Just took a quick second to hit in the connection. And we now have access to one of our jump boxes here. So again, really great use case, very minimal effort to set up, just between the client, the policies, et cetera. You can also see in here as well that there are some other opportunities to publish like our internal websites or, for domain controller traffic, for Curb SSO, for internal Windows authenticated apps, or even our DCs. But again, these can be individual segments to specific users or specific scopes, is the big point here, that it doesn't just have to be a wide flat network like some of you are probably used to on VPN today. Just a quick time check. We got about 14 minutes left, so let me go through just a couple other key things, and we are going to take some Q&A at the end here in just a few. So one other thing I want to talk through very quickly is going to be the web content filtering policies. Because on the internet side, we are forcing egress through Microsoft, is we can set up the ability of blocking different sites and services based on categories, based on specific lists of sites. So, and these are all kind of following the standard like NetStar slash like for whoever does kind of the standard site to site ranking and rating out there. You can see here I'm blocking like child abuse and hacking and illegal drugs and peer-to-peer networks, productivity services like other third-party chats and social networking. And again, this, because I'm egressing the traffic, I can control that. So if I go up here and I say go to a site like MGM Sportsbook, we can see that I can't reach this page because it's been blocked by our web content filter. I can also choose, let's see, another category here. I think I had maybe Marlboro. So I can go to Marlboro because that's blocked related to cigars or cigarettes, excuse me. um, we've got that access blocked as well, and that's something I can control again in all these different scenarios. I love the example that Jeff brought up as well, where I can even say things like, if you are of a high risk condition or have an event on your device through compliance rules in Intune and other things like that, maybe we even limit your access further until that issue gets resolved, or we can almost fully isolate your device using some of the SSE technologies and solutions like Defender for Endpoint together by creating kind of a unique solution there as well. Also common to be able to block specific websites and services as well. Gmail often comes up because, again, I may want to limit access to personal webmail apps on a corporate device for fear of just blocking. And by the way, I'm not going to sign in here, but the actual sign-in page, gmail.com, is blocked here after I get through the login. But you have those options so that you're not worried about your corporate data moving to those services. Those are all set up again by the individual rules that you just saw me go through there, but then also I can set up security profiles and then apply these profiles to specific subsets or individuals of users as well. So again, a lot of capabilities and also reporting built in around that. This last section we're going to cover really quickly here is going to be the logging and reporting, because I do see a lot of questions rolling in. I want to make sure we get to those today. One is you'll see the audit log here, which is just really going to be the changes to the SSE service. You can see me here making some changes to policy and then adding some device links. Traffic log is going to give you all the detail of all traffic, and you can even see there nearly real time with my MGM traffic outbound being blocked. In this case, other traffic that's being allowed. And again, this is helpful for me because, again, I can understand what people are using, how those services are being controlled, and if they're not, maybe put some policies in place around those. And then even here's my, actually my machine communicating with our domain controllers, which I did not forcefully do, and then our RDP to our jump boxes, and then even access to our M365 resources. So again, some really nice, easy built-in pieces there as well. I do want to really quickly show the enriched log view here as well. and some of the workbooks for reporting purposes. Actually, I'm just going to go right to that because we've got quite a few questions. But this was recently launched, I think, in the last week or so. In this case, we have the ability of doing pretty significant insight data based on all the traffic that is coming in and out of, for that matter, the SSE solution. So right now, this is being sent over into a log analytics workspace. It's just a diagnostic log out. We can get our usage over time, our locations that our users are coming in from, top allowed and block categories. Again, things I would expect or think you would expect from other solutions are going to be in here. I'd also point out some other really helpful scenarios for like client activity and discovery. So again, understanding how many clients are connected, where they're connected from, is also good. You can see my and some of my other peers' devices that are all connected here as a part of this as well. But again, this does give you some level of visibility and reporting, which can also be made available via Power BI and any other solutions that you may want or look for as well. I think that is probably pretty good, at least from a demonstration perspective. I did see quite a few questions rolling in, but I want to give Jeff a chance to finish on the pricing side here, and then we will in an approach and things where we can help, and then we'll make sure to end off here with Q&A. So Jeff, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Rich. Get our slides back up here. Great. So we did want to talk about pricing on these new features. So independently, we have both the internet access and the private access available as a step-up license for $5 per user per month. So this works well if you have some specific users that you want to trial this with, or maybe just some limited use cases that you want to just do some independent users. I think the more interesting fit is the new offering through Microsoft Interest Suite. It was announced just a little while ago. I did see a question in the Q&A about, is this included with 5-level licensing? It is not. So private access and inter access is a step-up licensing, but with Interest Suite, we can combine some of these costs. So Intra P1, Intra P2, very common, we would be familiar with, the E3 and E5 levels equivalent. Interest Suite steps you up and not only gives you internet access and private access, but also if you have the interest in intra-governance, some of the advanced features there, intra-verified ID, which is fairly new and quite interesting, we'll get you all of that for a combined cost of $12 per user a month. It's something like a $20-some combined cost reduced down to 12. Also see in the note, we have been informed that if you already are a P1, P2 user or E5 or 5-level equivalent, you can get a discount on that Interest Suite cost, kind of offset and just pay the difference. That'll probably need to be discussed with your Microsoft rep. We haven't seen the numbers on that one yet. But not included with the base license. This is a step up.
And Jeff, I would call it too, these are all list pricing for anyone that has an enterprise contract or agreement with Microsoft or a CSP provider. You may pay less than this. These are just what the advertised MSRP prices are.
Great. All right. So, and finally, just if you're ready to test this out, you want to try to implement some of this, we would be happy to help you along a couple of offerings that we might be able to provide you with. If you're still in the discovery phase and you kind of want to trial some of these out, see how they would fit in your org, we can run a proof of concept with you. We'll kind of give you the deeper dive on the feature sets and what's available to you. We can leverage some of that trial licensing and deploy a couple of selected scenarios, a couple of those things that jump out to you as being quite a great fit. Work through those with you, review how they come out, and kind of plan for next steps if you want to do a deployment or something after that. If you're ready to go, we also fully support some pilot deployments. Really, again, talk through what your success factors, your expectations, what's going to fit well for you in your environment. We'll prioritize 2 or 3 scenarios with SSE for that pilot. Help you deploy and configure those configurations. We'll come back with the results and learnings for you, as well as help you with an actionable next step and adoption plan for expanding that out. So, and certainly, we're also available for any sort of custom projects. If you have some specific deployment needs, we'll help you out there as well. Just let us know. So what we'll do here now, thank you for attending this, but we'll handle some Q&A right now. Just see if we saw a few of these in the chat here.
Yeah, so I can take a couple, Jeff, really quick. So remote network connection app proxy, I'm not sure if it was a specific question or a statement, but the app proxy does have a verified HA configuration option, and that is well supported and documented by Microsoft. So that was one of the first questions. How does Microsoft Enter Private Access ensure compliance with varying data privacy regulations across regions? It's not. I mean, it's going to depend on what regulations and controls are requested specifically. So, if there is, if you've historically had any audits or needs that are required or requested you to have forced tunnel VPN access or specific routing access where you're, inspecting all traffic from the endpoints or a subset of that traffic in some cases. This will assist with that in those types of scenarios. That's going to be probably though a mixture of public, more internet access than it will be private access in that scenario. And so I'm just going to roll through some of these. There is no Linux client, that is correct. The way to support Linux today is to essentially deploy the remote connector for the network in question that is supported. Assuming the devs are there, if they are remote today, that is currently not supported in the Microsoft solution.
I see the next one here, enabling or disabling the client. Yes, supported. So if you have a managed device, you want to enforce that they have to have that client on and running, we can completely eliminate the ability for them to disable that. And on the flip side, certainly we can also have the policy set so that some of those services are not accessible unless you have the client and are coming through SSE.
Yeah, basically you disable the client and then you just get access to nothing other than, maybe Google or Bing. Can this be used against an internal RDSH environment? I've not validated that personally, but in general, from a protocol support perspective, it should be able to be used. It's something that I can certainly validate. And if you'd like to reach out to myself, Jeff, or our marketing team on it, I can follow up with you on that as well. There was a question or more of a statement, I think, on web block. So today you cannot customize that message, but there is actually a message that does pop up. I've been having some challenges. I think it's actually the way my demo environment set up, where it does have kind of a generic this is being blocked, kind of a nicer message than one you saw. I do not believe that can be customized this moment.
You can kind of think about it. It's blocking at the network protocol. So
yeah,
your browser is basically saying nothing when it's being enforced.
Yep. How do you manage the registration of personal devices? So, that's an odd one to tackle right now. I would say that personal devices, we obviously want to limit the client deployment on those. So I can understand if there's some trepidation on having to deploy a client. Really, your path forward, especially if you're a government or office, an office park or location or an education institution, you could deploy the remote connectivity site-to-site tunnel and handle all the traffic routing that way for all the devices on specific networks or solutions. That would be the method in which I would do that on BYO devices specifically, if that's something that you desire.
And I see another license question here. Do we have to license every user in our tenant or only the users that we want to protect? Yes, you can do individual licensing. We can do a subset of users, scope it by group or just certain people. So if you want to start off with just having your admins have that private access, so you can do MFA in front of your servers, absolutely can limit it to just a few people.
Yeah, and just to go on to that one step further. So that's one thing that will be additionally checked in the future. And just like anything else, as Jeff just mentioned, with any of that, E3, E5, et cetera, licensing, you may get access to some specific services with a handful of licenses, but to be compliant, you do have to license everyone who would be in scope of a private access or a internet access policy.
All right, Rich, looks like we can wrap up here.
Awesome.
Great. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Hopefully you got a good view into the new SSE offerings here from Microsoft. Certainly let us know if you have any questions. We follow up here. This recording will also be available to you. But thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.